You know, it's kind of funny. This year's lockdown pay-per-view usually is hyped by the Lethal Lockdown being the featured match of the night. Basically being the match you want to build towards. You want to build your pay-per-view towards. Well, it seems that this year the Lethal Lockdown is not going to be featured as the main match. Instead, of course, understandably, we will have Storm and Rude. Now, you probably ask yourself, why is that? Well, it seems that this year's Lethal Lockdown match was kind of pushed under the bus a little bit. In other words, it was just mentioned. That's right, usually the Lethal Lockdown match is mentioned basically a month or so before lockdown occurs. And usually right after the more recent pay-per-view. Now, the question is, why was that? Well, last year you had Fortune versus Immortal. The match, the main event match of the night. This year, and in the previous year you had Team Hogan, Team Flair. Again, very prominent. This year, however, it's Team Bischoff versus Team Bischoff. Now you might say to yourself, how could that not be important? Well, it's real simple. According to people like the Off the Rope Show, TV Tracks, Dirt Sheet, PWI Torch, no one really gives a fuck about this feud. And yet the only way they're going to try to make it interesting for you is if they have the stipulation that the losing Bischoff leaves TNA. Now, we know, as far as the airing of these TV tapings, these airings, we know who the captains are. We know that Garrett Bischoff is the captain for his team, and we know Gunner is the captain for Eric's team. Alright, that's understandable, seeing as though Gunner's always representing Eric. But then you gotta look at who the four of the teammates are. Well, on Garrett's side, you have the teammates of Austin Aries, that's right, Austin Aries, AJ Styles, Ken Anderson, Mr. Anderson, and Rob Van Dam. So those are Garrett's teammates. On the other side, you have joining Gunner, you have Bully Ray, Kazarian, Daniels, and someone yet to be known. Now, the reason I mention this is because that person that is yet to be known is the only thing that's going to keep people's interest in this match. Because you don't know who Eric's going to bring in to be part of his team. But I think a little speculation is in order. And in my honest opinion, I think the most obvious speculation as to who could be the most obvious candidate is somebody that Jeff Siegel, the Schleg Daddy, when he has to talk about this individual, gets so mad, so pissed, that he has to assume a certain position. That's right. That's right. If you guessed that person, you're right. And it's ironic that this would be the more obvious and likely candidate to be the final member of Team Bischoff. because of one reason. This is Lockdown, one of their main pay-per-views of the year. Genesis, yes, was one of the main four, but that was in the Impact Zone. Usually when they take a pay-per-view on the road, that means something. That's one of the big pay-per-views. That's one of the seasonal pay-per-views. The ones that they focus the entire season around. And Lockdown is the Spring Spectacular, the NBA Finals, the NCAA Tournament Championship game of the spring for TNA. So it's only obvious that you want to build it up bigger and you want to focus on it more. Just as a lot of people pointed out, every time you have one pay-per-view like Victory Road was recently. We recently had Victory Road. And even before that, I think we had what? Against All Odds. And yet, the main focus instead of those two was Lockdown. So they were building towards that annual seasonal big event for the company. So it would only make sense that a certain off-the-rope show host doesn't like would probably make his return in this. Now, why is that? Now, why would he decide to make his return? Well, it's real simple. He's been gone off television for quite some time. He's currently occupying his time while competing in AAA as their champion, as well as competing and helping out in India with Raka King. So it only makes sense that he'd finally make a return. And also you got to look at the time frame. 2 months from now is the 10th anniversary of TNA. Slammiversary, 10-year anniversary of the company. So it only makes sense that this guy would arrive back in time for that. So that, to me, is the more obvious speculation. And you got to think of it this way. Here's a guy that, is part, as far as last as we know, is still part of Immortal. And wants nothing more than to have power and control. And wants nothing more than to have power and control. Or so you think. See, a lot can change. A lot can change. You see, right now, one of the guys that he last feuded with, is currently a heel and is associated with Immortal in some ways. The other guy that he feuded with is now the champion, and is associated with Immortal in some ways. So it would only make sense that this certain individual would return at Lockdown as the mystery member of Eric Bischoff's team, as the final member of Eric Bischoff's team. Only in a ironic twist, possibly, and I'm not saying it could happen, possibly turn on Bischoff's team and get Eric out of TNA, or at least off camera. Now I know the Schleg Daddy, Jeff Schlegel's not going to like hearing that. But you know what? It's going to happen. I just got this obvious feeling. Now, unless they surprise us and have Hogan be the last member of Eric's team, and thus make it look like Hogan's again going to go Hollywood and give Immortal back the power they once had, then that would be expected too. But I think the most obvious choice right now is a certain Double J. That's right. But then again, they could also pull a rabbit out of the hat and have somebody new come in. Somebody we wouldn't expect. Like, say, maybe a John Morrison as John Higgy or whatever. John Hennig. Sun Guy or Johnny Nitro, or whatever you want to call him, come in and be that mystery partner, or that final member. That could happen. But again, you never know. You never know. They could bring somebody up from the new developmental territorial partnership with OVW. You never know. They can bring in somebody from Rock King like Chavo Guerrero or Harry Smith. But I think the most likely option is the founder of that company. Whether we like it or not, you look at the time frame, it's probably going to be him. Because he, like I said, the names that I have mentioned for Eric's team, Gunner, Bully Ray, Kazarian, Daniels, and one yet to be unknown, who else are you going to get? I mean, again, another surprise is they have maybe Abyss a return and join up with Immortal again. Maybe. But I think the most obvious choice is you got to go with Jarrett. Unless they throw Flair in there, in which I don't think they will. But I think the most obvious option is Jarrett. And I know people may or may not like to hear that, but it's true. So that's my thoughts on the Lethal Lockdown match and who I think is going to be the final member of Eric Bischoff's team. Agree? Comment down below. Tell me what you guys think, and I'll talk to y'all later.